everyone, I'm Captain Logan, and welcome once again to the dark and mysterious depths of the comic book vault. Today we're going to take a look at the Invincible Iron Man Annual #1 from 2010. This, of course, just came out a couple of years ago, and Eric has been begging me to read this for a long time. I used to read Iron Man, not a giant Iron Man fan. I liked Invincible, and still do, honestly. I just sort of lost interest because I'm not a giant Iron Man guy. But I was reading some of Fraction's run when I first started doing comics, comic book videos a couple years back, and I kind of dropped off, like I said, but I don't know. When I read stuff like this, I sort of wish I hadn't, because Fraction has such a great sense of what Iron Man should be and what his universe should be like, and I love his voice for the Mandarin. What this book is about is sort of the origin of the Mandarin, but what's really neat about how it works is that it's not just your everyday average origin. It's not just, we're gonna go back in time and take a look at what actually happened to the Mandarin. It's a lot more interesting than that. What it does is it tells a present-day tale about the Mandarin trying to get a movie made about his life. And so he finds this filmmaker named Jun, who is this really, really popular kind of art house picture kind of filmmaker who everyone says that all of his films reveal some kind of universal human truth. And this is the guy that Mandarin wants to make a movie of his life. So at first you think, okay, maybe this is just a framework where the Mandarin is going to tell this guy about his life and then he's going to make a movie about it. But it's much more involved than that, and Mandarin, being so full of himself and having such an amazingly crazy ego, insists that his background is not what it is, to the point of absolute lunacy. And it's a lot of fun to watch. What he does is he explains pieces of his background to Jun, and then as he's saying that, we get to see what actually happened. I love the comic book medium for that kind of storytelling, the classic unreliable narrator at work with the visuals telling you one thing and that narrator telling you something else entirely. And of course here it's very clear as to which one is true and which one isn't. Mandarin shows that he really has no mercy at all, and that he's willing to do whatever it takes to get anything that he wants. And so as soon as he kidnaps Jun and his wife, he puts Jun's wife in servitude, which is like really sad, actually. There's a moment where he hands where the Mandarin hands Jun a picture of his wife in servitude, and she's obviously really sad and looks nearly brainwashed. And you actually get the sense in places that maybe she even kind of is. And the Mandarin tells him, when he finally asks about his wife 6 days after they've been kidnapped, you should have asked sooner. Here's a picture of what she looked like 6 days ago. I can't guarantee that she's still in the same state, but if you had asked 6 days ago, I would have shown you the same picture. All of that is it's spooky. It's really and sad. But anyway, the very first thing he does to get Jun to commit to this is he has one of his men stab him in the eye, and he loses an eye. And so this filmmaker realizes, okay, the Mandarin means business. So he takes him to Mandarin City, and he forces him to, like I said, make this movie about his life. And as it's going on, he's just getting absurd. The Mandarin is saying things that clearly aren't true, and in fact, really nothing from his past that he claims is true. He wants to build this picture-perfect ideal of himself, and the idea seems to be that the Mandarin is so powerful, both because of his 10 superpowered rings, and also because of all of the wealth he's amassed, clearly partly because of those rings. He's got so much power that he thinks that he can rewrite history, and if he can make enough people think that, or at least have to go along with his own version of history, he can pretend like that's how things really are. And I think that's all really interesting. And so he claims that he was born to wealth, and that his parents were were of, like, you know, noble birth and all of that, and we find out, of course, at the same time that we're being told that the Mandarin actually was born to a prostitute, and that there was no father around, and that he had this horrible life. And then even the way that he talks about how he got the rings is totally different. Where, like the way he tells it, there's this alien that crashed on the planet, and he found him, and he helped dig him out of his spaceship rubble, and then the guy gave the Mandarin these rings for helping him, which of course is absurd in and of itself, because if you were an alien and you had these 10 extremely powerful rings in your ship, probably that would be the last thing you would give anyone just for helping you, right? And it's played up for being what it is, absolutely ridiculous. And what actually happened, of course, is that he found this alien and he killed him brutally, and then found these rings and stole them, and that's how he ultimately ended up, you know, amassing all of his power. And what I really like I said, is that we're getting some actual background about the Mandarin. We're learning who he is and where he came from, but it's being told completely as a present-day story. And it's not even really flashbacks so much as just conversations about his past. And what this filmmaker ends up doing is he decides that he's going to dupe the Mandarin, and that he's actually going to make a film about the Mandarin's real background without the Mandarin knowing, which is extremely hard because the Mandarin is part of pretty much every part of the process. And there's a point actually where the Mandarin comes on set and starts directing without the director, without John, and tells John to go home early, and he says, "Oh, this is easy. I don't even need you now." And he tells John to go home early, and he starts making the film himself. And it gets absolutely preposterous, and it's really entertaining even while it's really sad, because you kind of know what's going to happen at the end. And as I always say with these vaults now, I'm spoiling things in case you don't get a chance to read this, just for people who don't pick up whatever I happen to be reviewing. So if you don't want to know how this ends, turn this off now. But I'm going to go ahead and spoil everything. What happens is the Mandarin, by the end, starts making these big changes that even contradict things that have already been filmed earlier in the movie. And John keeps saying, "Well, we can't do that. I'm trying to." He's still at least trying to make the Mandarin think that he's trying to make an artistic picture, because after all, that's the reason that he was kidnapped, was to make this artistic picture. And it's a little strange that the Mandarin wanted this guy, because this is the guy who makes these kind of true-to-life kinds of movies. And I think that part of that is that if this guy makes the movie and Mandarin can make people think that he did it willingly, then people might go along with more of what's in it, because he makes these kinds of movies. And I think there's some interesting social commentary there that if we have a track record of doing a certain thing, especially if you know, a person who gets really well known and famous and people trust him, then maybe he can start doing things like this and people will just buy it, and you know, no matter what it is, even if it's totally loony like this is. And what the Mandarin starts doing is he starts putting in absurd things like Tony Stark is dead. Well, Tony Stark clearly is not dead, and he was close to death, but you know, John brings him a newspaper, and says, "No, see, look, Tony Stark's still alive. We can't say that he's dead." And Mandarin says, "Well, I can say anything I want to, and in my version, he's dead." And I think probably the funniest thing is that the Mandarin wants to depict Tony Stark as a drug dealer, and that's why he captured him in the first place. That he was in his country, and that he was dealing heroin. And he says every time Tony Stark is in a shot, he wants him to be holding a suitcase filled with heroin. And then at the end, he has this giant. In what's supposed to be the big denouement of the movie is this giant Iron Man armor that he makes to look like this big monster, and he gives it teeth, and he makes it because he's trying to, you know, vilify Iron Man and make him the big bad guy of the piece. And it's really funny. And what ends up happening is that the Mandarin comes in and he doesn't like what the actor is doing, and so he starts fighting the Iron Man armor himself, and he says, I'm going to step in and be the actor now. So just all of a sudden, by the third act, Mandarin is supposed to be played by Mandarin, and then he starts beating the crap out of this guy in an Iron Man armor suit. He totally loses his mind in the middle of this, and starts hitting it with his ring powers, and decimating the suit. The guy in it probably dies. I wasn't real clear. Anyway, it's nuts. And by the very end, the guy managed to successfully go behind the Mandarin's back, and he was able to shoot some things that Mandarin didn't know about. He was able to put some things together in such a way where he could manipulate it to tell the story he wanted it to tell. And I didn't mention, by the way, that there's a part where Jun goes to it actually gets permission from the Mandarin to go to some of the places where Mandarin lived, because he says, I can't make this picture correctly if I don't actually experience some of the places that you experienced. And the Mandarin doesn't want him to, but he lets him. And I was actually a little surprised by that, because the Mandarin has to know that there's still people there who know where he came from and what he's like. And of course, Jun finds those people, and he gets some of this real information. And that's how Jun ultimately figures out all of the lies that Mandarin tells. He knows he's lying, but he doesn't know exactly what about, and he discovers all that. So then the opening of the gala happens, the big movie premiere, and the movie starts, and it opens with this great opening narration that actually calls back to something that he said earlier, that says there are three sides to every story: what you hear, what you know, and what you're told. And then it goes on from there, and ultimately it ends, of course, in Mandarin having Jun killed, and I'm pretty sure his wife gets killed, and then by the end, Mandarin says, here's to happy endings, and the whole idea is that he continues to manipulate history, where he got this great filmmaker to make this movie, and he says at the end, I still love your films, and he has this movie theater rebuilt that he destroyed because he got freaking crazy angry about this movie, and he has it named after Jun, who he just killed for making his movie the way he made it. Anyway, it's an absolutely fabulous way to give a character's backstory, and to also create a new narrative out of it. And Tony Stark doesn't appear in it at all. It's all about the Mandarin, and we get it from the eyes of this one-shot protagonist, and I just think it's fabulous. I like everything about it. And anyway, if you can go out and get your hands on it, this is definitely a great part of anybody's collection, even if you're not a big Iron Man person like I'm not. I really, really enjoyed this. Well, hey, thanks a lot, as always, for watching the Comic Vault. If you have anything you ever want to see me or Vince review on the Vault, you can always send that to our P.O. Box. It's Geekvolution, P.O. Box 14183, Lenexa, Kansas 66285. I'm Captain Logan, and happy reading.